Before we get started with the show, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Global Training Center. As trade compliance professionals, you want to make sure that your procedures and documentation are completed as correctly as possible to avoid any delays and possible fines. We provide a range of trade compliance courses that will fit your needs. From in-person or web training to recorded on-demand courses, we can train one or even thousands on your team through your learning platform or on our portal. We can even customize a private session for your team. Go to globaltrainingcenter.com to find out more.
Hey folks, we're in for another show of Simply Trade Podcast. Today, we're going to get to talk about TPM 25. That's the Trans-Pacific Maritime Conference. Steve, welcome to the show. Long time no see, my friend.
Oh, Andy, so great to be with you, and really have admired your work now for a couple of years. Can't believe that we met at a TPM, with your cowboy hat and all. And I see this two guys filming, and I'm thinking to myself, this is impressive. Not many of us contribute like this. But anyway, thank you so much for having me on today.
Oh, you bet. Lalo, for folks, by the way, he is at a conference, actually, as we speak. He's at the ICPA conference in Florida, so he's not able to be with us in the studio today. But with that, I wanted to really talk with Steve on getting an update on TPM 25. There's obviously so much activity with the new administration coming in, plus there's still a lot of factors in the supply chain world and whatnot. So, Steve, let me ask you, were there some really, I guess it's not going to be your standard agenda and topics, if you will, on any conference speaker that's in supply chain or compliance or import, export, trade in today's world. How was it as far as what you saw out there?
Andy, I think it was interesting, right? I was thinking about kind of how to answer your question. And, I think this was my 10th TPM. I've been to 10 out of the 25. I've been around a long time, and obviously that afforded me a lot of chances to go based on the seasonality. And I have to say that this year, for me, right, I'll give you my own personal take on it. It was definitely, I know that a lot of people had kind of that FOMO, fear of missing out. And I know, yourself and Lalo would have loved to have been there. And I know there's some other pressing things that you had. And I don't want to rub it in and say, wow, you guys really missed out. But I'll say this, you guys really missed out.
I'm sure we did, because I was like, it was killing me going, man, I had a schedule conflict. And I'm like, oh, man, I would have loved to have gotten out there to interview some people after some of those sessions and whatnot. But keep going, because you got me intrigued now.
Well, I think the reason why it was very different, even for me, right? 42-year veteran of the ocean industry, know my way in and out of it like a paper bag. And I thought it was really intriguing. And I think maybe one of the reasons why it was super intriguing this year is it didn't seem like it was a battle between the beneficial cargo owner, the importer, exporter, and the so-called carrier, right? The ocean vendor. It seemed this year the theme was the political instability, the political uncertainty, and that very issue that you raised at the top of the show, obviously tariffs and compliance and the extra costs, and really the fear factor of a lot of unique potential revenue bogeys for importers and exporters that are not necessarily the carrier's fault, right? So it's interesting that I think the banding together, or brotherhood or sisterhood, the cohesion was very tight this year, because it was not like he said, she said, or we're against you. It was like, oh my God, right? How do we now jump into this new world of political instability and uncertainty? And I think the overall theme at TPM was, or actually a lot of these things happened a day or two before we all arrived in California. Some of the new tariffs were introduced. So there was a lot of on the ground, firefighting, and TPM couldn't have planned it better. The good folks from S&P Global Market Intelligence, had John Bolton, right, the President Trump's ex-national security advisor, and so his topic, on the uncertainty was very apropos as well. So I think it was really unique because everyone has their own takeaway in terms of how they're going to go forward. And quite frankly, it was puzzling, right, to a lot of organizations in terms of what's the next step that they take. So I think the instability and the uncertainty and the volatility made this for a very unique meeting.
The issue there I keep coming back to is don't react, respond. And then some of that, you have to respond to an issue where it's almost like you're in a foxhole, if you will, in the old traditional, battles, is keep your head down and let the firefight kind of calm down before you stick your head back up. I would say that with the contracts. Yeah, well, I mean, it is. And it's, everybody, you go with what you know. That's the one thing. Everybody's going, well, what do we do? And you start pulling back and going, not making a decision is actually a decision. So to that point, I guess I look at it, Steve, is that obviously there are huge dollars in contracts committed to at the TPM conference. I was really amazed on how big last year was. I've only been once, so last year was my first time there, and it just amazed me on how many, I guess, sales deals are signed, if you will, at TPM, or definitely doors opened at TPM. So there's a lot of folks going. That said, in the midst of this chaos, I would think you could only go with what you know at the time, make your best choice. And then if something changes, you'll have to have additional information and make a new decision. Don't look at it as, well, I've screwed up. No, it's like you got to make a new decision. But what do you think as far as all the things that are coming at everybody here?
Yeah, it's remarkable. This morning for the last 4 or 5 hours, I'm doing some follow-up from TPM on some of the folks I met, right? And the thing is you don't know what you don't know. And in America, just in North America alone, right, there are just so many global import and export companies. And, I've been in the industry 42 years, and some of the names that popped up at TPM, a lot of first-timers came, which is really another theme that we should talk about, Andy. A lot of times you get a lot of repeat business, a lot of repeat clients. This year I saw, really for the first year, a whole plethora of new, young, vibrant, logistics professionals attending, or the companies sending them for the first time. And a lot of last minute registrations, right, which I think might have been in keeping with what the geopolitical uncertainty was. But we'll get back to that. I think the issue is, and again, this is always the craziest thing about, the tariffs. And if you just focus on like China as an example, right, it's who pays the tariffs, right? Well, the importer is paying the tariffs, right? And then, I think the way that these folks try to reverse engineer what's going on with China is that, well, this will put more pressure on China to cut their costs, to the importer of record, right? And then who passes the costs on? I think that it's a never-ending battle. Each individual client, each importer, each exporter, they have to deal with this drama, organically, right, internally. And I think that's the thing about it. Not one size fits all. And I was just reading the great Jason Miller from University of Michigan State University professor, talking about, I think, something that, subject's probably near and dear to you guys. It was aluminum imports from Canada, right? And I think as the U.S. probably imports, I want to say, I can't remember now, but it was 85% of our imports of this particular aluminum grade material are from Canada. And it just ended up costing, 50% more, right? And that obviously those costs have to be passed on. So I think that the whole idea here of what we've seen at TPM, as I said, was finding a new way to navigate cost control, right? And so anytime I hear that, right? And again, this is not a commercial for Ocean Audit, but I always think that, in an area of uncertainty and volatility, whenever ocean freight rates go up, whenever tariffs go up, what's the first thing that CFOs and other thought leaders in importers and exporters think about? Well, we've got to cut our costs, and obviously getting refunds, finding a way around the tariffs, getting refunds on overbilled ocean freight, duties, domestic freight. it's at everyone's tongue, right? And that 6 months ago, that might not have been the cadence. They might have been looking at, as an example, a Democratic victory, which might not have necessarily caused the ripple waves that we're seeing now. I just find it really interesting that this TPM was really a mandate. The after effect was really a mandate of the election, right? And I think that, as I said before, it was very agnostic in terms of like who is putting the carrier rates are too high, over, the Red Sea crisis. All of a sudden, right, Red Sea went away. And I'm talking to another expert that you might have met, Lars Jensen in Copenhagen, Lars is renowned as one of the top actually, he's probably the top voice in container shipping. And, he said that the Red Sea is still an issue. But I'll tell you this, right? So when Lars and I had our talk last year, 2024 at TPM, he gave the Red Sea on a scale of 1 to 100, a 80 or 85 rating in terms of its crisis point, boiling point for what it would mean for all of 2024. And, he was spot on. I asked him the same question this year about the duties, the instability, and another issue we can maybe talk about, potential tariffs and fees on Chinese-made vessels, which is a new phenomena and a whole new element. And Lars gave it a 95. So when it gets on the 95 factor on Lars, I think you can just throw the baby out with the bathwater and think about the fact that the political, if you could have a theme, you could not have a better theme about the political uncertainty, the political instability. If you missed TPM and you just started a conversation with that, you'd fit right in.
Well, it's one of those where it's forcing people to think in their supply chain in areas that they traditionally have not ever considered. There's still, business to be had with China. But now the issue is, not only do we have the ocean freight to the West Coast, but now you got the Panama Canal that's coming into play and has been an issue. It was a really bad issue last year because of the drought, and the frequency of vessels going through there was a problem. Well, now, I don't know if there has been an issue with China owning both the ports at both ends of the Panama Canal. I think there's been some issues with that may be changing. I don't know, but all these are just variable factors that are just overwhelming, aren't they?
Well, yeah, they are. And again, going on the Panama Canal issue for a second, right? This administration, and again, I'll take an agnostic political view here, but I think that what happens is, when you have somebody that would jump in and, say, well, we should go from 50% to 75%. I think the president is there's a lot of decisions that, some of us might say are flying by the seat of the pants. And some of them could be threats and, idle threats. Obviously, he wants to, President Trump wants to take the canal back, right? So, who's to say that there could be something coming down the pike? And again, I'm not saying that I know anything or I've seen anything, but, we can always say, hey, there's a new Panama Canal, tariff coming into effect. It's, hopefully nothing like that ever happens. But going back to what you said for a second, I think that one of the things we saw pre-TPM, I believe it was a study that Mattel Toys had shared in general with the marketplace. Mattel's always been a big production, obviously in China, and they've tried so hard over the years, right, since 2018 or the original Trump tariffs, to wean away from there and move more of the production away from China. Yeah, I think still to this day, the point of the story is still 25, 35% of the production is coming from there. And again, that's a far cry from, the 85% that might have been before. But as you said, it's hard to get away from there, and it touches a lot of unique and kind of classic industries, like obviously toys and furniture and footwear and, lighting fixtures and the whole 9 yards, right? We're still a nation of consumers like that. Just look at the top 100 products sold on Amazon, right? I would say 99 of them are made or have been made in the past in China. So it's hard to get away from our appetite on that. But it just seemed that the thirst for knowledge at this TPM was more in the reins of the guys that had some of the tariff and the political workarounds, as the guys like myself that had cost control initiatives and cost control efforts that could help potentially partially offset some of the trouble, added cost expenses that are coming down to the pike. And it seemed like there was less emphasis, and this is really weird, right, on the traditional service providers that would carry the goods, right, from China to New York or China to LA, the ocean carriers, right? It seemed like they kind of got a little bit of a hall pass, if that makes sense. So
in the short term, as we're looking at, TPM is a phenomenal conference where you can learn so much on it. So folks, I'm going to tell you right now, it's a conference worth looking at and following, and especially Steve on this. But I guess in that is trying, like you said, the last minute, the first timers. That's a good thing that people are reaching out to go and actually attend these things.
Let's see, TPM ended almost a week ago. And so I've been back. I stayed to the last minute and was there when it first started. I've never seen anything like it. I'm 64 years old now, and I'm running with the 20 and 30 something year olds 24 hours a day, and never put so many mileage on my shoes. Never have had, the Achilles tendon just inflamed like that because of all the walking around, right? Never seen that. Of course, that's a function of age. But it was an incredibly, all that put aside, like a good athlete, I'm going to work through my injuries. But I think that so many unique themes and developments that we've never, ever seen in the course of containerized shipping, which I think is probably if you ask me in the elevator, on the ride up, the elevator pitch, what was the one difference you saw this year in all of it, all the other TPM? I just think the instability, the uncertainty, and the fact that now we're all in it together, right? This is another cool thing, I think, for broadcasters like Lalo and yourself and myself that do it part-time, but have a full-time business too, in my ocean audit. This is a fire starter, right? This is forget the fire festival, right? Which is, a fraud. This is a true bona fide convo starter for trade and logistics professionals like you and I.
There's no question we're going to be able to come through this. It's a storm right now. I get it. And we'll figure it out because, as you just said, we're all in this together. Yeah, there's going to be people hollering and screaming about it. But on the same token, to me, I'm like, okay, what can you do about it? And some of it is you're going to have to earn your bucks as a leader and executive of your company and go from there.
It's really interesting. Something you said, I just thought about, I think I wouldn't say that people at TPM or any executive for that matter, well, I was going to say they don't necessarily emulate what government's doing and start to find a solution, because obviously they do. In this case, it's the tariffs, it's the duties, right? It's a government thing, right? So there's a reaction to it. I think that it bodes well for, resetting, right? And I think that's what a lot of these companies are going through. And actually, that's a great word. I think the reset button, Staples used to have that button, easy. Remember that button, easy? I think if you had the word reset, right, on every SVP, supply chain, or logistics, or CFO desk, they would be reaching for the reset button because, it's challenging. And, think about the other thing that I hadn't thought about until we had our talk today. All the folks that left TPM, right? There's 4,000 folks flying back to their offices. I would bet, right, that 60% of them, one of the first things is the controller or CFO wants to meet with them. Hey, what'd you find out? What's going on? Yeah, and I mean, I hadn't even considered that, how intensively a lot of my friends, customers, colleagues will be debriefed right back in their regional or the headquarter cities, by their executive leadership to try to glean something. I had a call with a incredible guy, known this guy for a number of years in Europe, and his products are being impacted by potentially these China ship penalties, and came to be that maybe the China ship penalties, and that I'm talking about where, if a Chinese ship is built or flagged, it'll cost the the importer or exporter a certain amount of surcharge per container. And the numbers that are being bandied about with this surcharge could be, in the $1,000 range, 1,000+ range. And so we were kind of joking is the wrong word, but a few of us professionals were thinking, even on day 2, where this was starting to linger out and to leak out a little bit at TPM about some of the potential challenges that clients would have with costs, we were thinking that no one knows what's going to hit them, right? I mean, we're hearing this and we're thinking, gosh, as a matter of fact, I'm looking at a couple of the business cards from TPM. I met Costa Paris, which is a friend of mine. He's one of the top maritime writers for the Wall Street Journal. And we were talking about, and he said, well, Steve, I heard the number's going to be X. And, I think a lot of importers, exporters are just going to be, flummoxed when they find out the quantums of how much extra they're going to be spending. And of course, what happens in that case is CFOs will always come back and they'll look at logistics and look at the supply chain guys and say, hey, you busted our budget, right? Why is that, right? And so it's an education thing. And that's why for professionals like you, Andy, myself, I think we have to really be on our game here, because a lot of blame game going around that could be going around soon. And the thing is like, it's like musical chairs, right? You don't want to be the last one standing when a powerful CFO comes and says, hey, how come we're 40% over budget?
If you're looking for ways to save money, at least reach out to Steve and you can look through that and he can give you some guidance that way. I think it would be phenomenal.
I did a study where, there's 500,000 of us. So in the logistics industry with logistics and supply chain title in our name on LinkedIn, about 500,000 of us in the US. And out of that 500,000, I said it once, I said it again, probably less than 100 or 200 of us at any one given point are continuously updating each other, putting good content in video. Andy and Lalo, 2 of them. I'm another one, and I don't even do that full time. As Andy said, I run Ocean Audit, and I get ocean refunds for 23 of the Fortune 100. So if you're an importer or exporter with a couple 100+ containers a year, I typically can return 6 figures of refunds to you from overbilling on ocean freight. So I appreciate, Andy, you're allowing me to come on and talk a little bit about TPM and Ocean Audit, and always great to see you, even without the hat today.
I know. I have gone hatless for today. It's like I feel kind of half naked without it. I got to tell you.
I know. It's your trademark. You're the real McCoy, and I say that lovingly. Always love talking to you, Andy, and thanks for having me today.
Well, folks, I will say that it has been such an honor to get to talk with Steve. And with that, again, subscribe to us, look up Steve, look up Global Training Center if you're needing some help with some things there. And with that, we're going to bid you a great day and hope you have a wonderful week. Take care.